It's 8 o'clock. This is the UK Tonight. Coming up, the assisted dying bill set to fail in England and Wales, but it's a different story elsewhere. Jersey has approved its bill for terminally ill adults. However, Sky News understands that the landmark legislation will fail in the House of Commons. Also tonight, the report into the shocking state of England's maternity care. Racism, bullying, staff shortages and babies going missing. Just some of the latest findings from the Amos report into NHS maternity services. Plus, the Sower murderer Ian Huntley tonight in a serious condition in hospital after being attacked in prison. And the Bayer Tapestry returning to the UK for the first time in 1,000 years. All that to come and much more here on the UK Tonight. Good evening. Well, tonight's show really does encompass the full circle of life. Today, we were given a further insight into shocking NHS maternity care in England, which found services are failing too many families with problems at every stage of the maternity journey. Failures repeated across the system with devastating consequences. Coming up, we'll hear from those working in and those failed by the NHS. Before that, though, it's been a mixed day for campaigners for assisted dying. On the one hand, Jersey voted to legalise it for terminally ill adults, becoming the second of the British Isles to do so. However, Sky News understands that the assisted dying bill in England and Wales will not become law, essentially because Parliament has run out of time to make it happen. We begin tonight with our health correspondent, Ashish Joshi.
This is less than a year ago. Campaigners for assisted dying celebrating a historic victory. But the controversial bill has effectively run out of time. The House of Lords ensuring it can't be passed in this parliamentary term, provoking fury from prominent campaigners like Dame Esther Ranson.
Well, this is absolute blatant sabotage. This is a handful of peers putting down 1,200 amendments, not to scrutinise the bill, which is their job, but to block it. That's what they wanted. A few peers, for their own reasons, have decided that they're going to stop this going through Parliament.
Dame Esther is herself battling terminal lung cancer, and she told Sky News the option to end her life with dignity should be hers to make.
I would want to die, as we all would, pain-free, at home, surrounded by my loved ones. And at the moment, I can't do that.
But opponents of assisted dying say the bill is flawed. Too many questions remain unanswered and safeguards cannot be guaranteed. And that's why the bill needed so much scrutiny.
Keir Starmer already has enough on his plate, and assisted dying is hardly a top priority for him, especially with so much opposition from within his own cabinet, like Shabana Mahmood or Wes Streeting, the health secretary.
I think this issue is very difficult and it needs proper scrutiny. That's what the members of the House of Lords have been doing. It didn't get proper scrutiny in the House of Commons. The main danger is to people who are vulnerable, whether they be disabled people or people maybe with dementia or people who are depressed or who have got autism. There's lots of vulnerable people. In fact, all of us can be vulnerable at different times in our lives.
I can announce that the assisted dying law has been adopted in third reading.
Campaigners can now point to Jersey, where a law to allow terminally ill adults to end their own lives has just been approved. It joins the Isle of Man as the second part of the British Isles to pass legislation allowing an assisted death. Assisted dying would have seen the biggest change to British society in a generation. And it seemed inevitable less than a year ago. But now there's real uncertainty over whether the country is ready to take such a giant step.
Well, Ashish joins me now. And Ashish, it's interesting, isn't it? Two of the British Isles agreeing that this legislation should come into place. Scotland is making moves as well. But in England and Wales, it seems like this isn't going to happen. And campaigners have described this as a once-in-a-generation opportunity. What happens once the clock runs down in Parliament? Is that it for this bill?
Well, it's for the bill as far as this Parliament is concerned. What supporters or people who want assisted dying in this country will do next is hope that the government will give them as much time and support. This isn't a government bill, Sarah-Jane. This is a private member's bill, and a lot of people, I think, had concerns over the mechanism in which the bill was introduced into Parliament, and they're saying that is why there was so much scrutiny in the upper chamber, in the House of Lords. But of course, the critics of the peers who have taken so long in debating what happens to the bill, to this bill, say it was a minority of unelected politicians who are stopping the will of the masses. This received overwhelming support in the Commons, and it was given time and support by the government, even though it's not a government bill. There was a free vote on it. So now I suppose it's back to the drawing board and hoping that if it doesn't get through this Parliament, which it certainly won't before the King's speech, then it will be reintroduced in the next term of Parliament, and then they will use the Parliamentary Act to bypass the House of Lords. So you won't see these prolonged debates in the House of Commons anymore, because it's passed the Commons once already. And then using this rarely used mechanism, this Act of Parliament, it will then bypass the Lords and then get become law in this country, pass through Parliament without needing the House of Lords to send it back to the Commons. That all very much depends on whether Keir Starmer has the will to carry on with this. But he has so much on his plate already. He's done what he said he was going to do. He's offered it as a free vote. It's not on his manifesto. It's not at the top of his agenda, his political agenda. He might think that he just doesn't want to be involved in this anyway, especially because leading members of his cabinet, like the Health Secretary, like the Home Secretary, are so fiercely opposed to it. But speaking to Kim Leadbeater's team this morning, they seem to suggest that they will wait until that there is absolutely no chance of this being given any more time. There are no more Fridays. There are only 6 Fridays left. That won't be enough time, 1,200 amendments already. And they will reintroduce this in the next term and then hope to use this Act of Parliament to bypass the Lords so it doesn't sit in the Lords for months at a time. But that will, I think, depend very much on what the Prime Minister and his government want to do, and whether they will give this bill the support it needs to be reintroduced in Parliament and give it the time it needs.
Ashish, thank you. Ashish Joshi there following that story for us today. This is a very divisive topic. So let's speak to 2 people on either side of the debate. Joining us tonight, Barbara Shooter, a pro-assisted dying campaigner who has a very personal story to share with us, and Dr. Gillian Wright from Our Duty of Care, and herself a former palliative care nurse. Good evening to you both. Thank you so much for coming on to discuss this issue. Emotions run high when we discuss it. There are so many compelling arguments on either side, but the truth of the matter, Barbara, as we sit here tonight, is that this bill isn't going to pass in England and Wales simply because Parliament has run out of time. The team behind the bill also confirming they now expect this legislation in its current form to fail. How are you feeling about that tonight?
I'm actually furious with what's happened in the Lords. It went through the Commons, it was passed there. It's the will of the vast majority of the public in the United Kingdom. And OK, the Lords have to scrutinise bills. That's perfectly understandable. But this isn't scrutiny. This is sabotage. This is pure filibustering by a tiny minority of unelected peers sitting in the upper chamber who have always been anti the law, who are now determined that it's not going to go through. Over 1,000 amendments. Some of them are completely risible. You know, the idea that no matter what your sex or age, you have to do a pregnancy test. The idea that they should test drive the drug first. These things are outrageous. It's pure sabotage. I think it's unconstitutional and it's an absolute outrage.
Dr. Wright, what's your reaction to this news today? Echoing Barbara's sentiments, we spoke to broadcaster and campaigner Esther Ransom here on Sky News today. She called it absolute blatant sabotage. Essentially, she believes it's a handful of members of the House of Lords putting in hundreds of amendments, as Barbara was saying there, to scrutinise the bill, which is, of course, their job, but ultimately she believes it was to block it.
Well, thank you. This was a private member's bill which was introduced and really didn't have the scrutiny that it should have had in the House of Commons, and so passed with a relatively small majority in the Commons, but hadn't had the kind of examination that it should have had or might have had if it'd been a government bill. And so there were clear lacking in problems in terms of, for example, some of the Royal Colleges had not given evidence. There hadn't been evidence from the British Society of Geriatrics, for example. And so there has been time taken to hear from different bodies, and there are significant concerns about this bill, and there has been due scrutiny. This is a matter of enormous national importance, and we have a bicameral system, and so it is right that the Lords has taken responsibility to look at the clear problems that were within the nature of this bill.
Barbara, I just want you to come in here and share your experience, why this is so personal to you. Your former husband, Adrian, had motor neurone disease, and you travelled with him to Switzerland so he could end his own life. That was his choice. And incredibly, you have been diagnosed with motor neurone disease yourself. I mean, the chances of that, I mean, you know, are just unfathomable. But you find yourself in this position. Talk to me through why you are supporting this bill, because you've been very public about saying it was the right decision for Adrian. It might not necessarily be the right decision for you, but you would like to have the choice.
I believe in choice. As I've said publicly many, many times, for Adrian, it was the right decision. He wanted to live for as long as he could, until ultimately his symptoms just became unbearable to him. And I think he was very close to dying anyway when we went to Switzerland, but he just decided he wanted control. When we got a date to go to Switzerland, he became quite buoyant because he knew that his torment was going to end. He became a very different person because he had control back again. It was a very difficult process, obviously. I was breaking the law at the time. I didn't really care that I was breaking the law, because to me, I wasn't committing anything illegal. What I was doing was I thought was a very compassionate act. And I know, as you say, almost unbelievably, last November, I too was diagnosed with motor neurone disease, which is, you know, according to my neurologist, just almost unheard of. But here we are. I have it. You know, I'm a long way from wanting to die. I still have a very good quality of life, but I don't know what my future is going to look like. It may be horrific. I may decide a long time down the line, or whenever it is, that I no longer want to carry on. And that is purely my choice. And to deny me that choice, I think, is deeply cruel. If I find, or anybody finds, with a terminal illness, because this is what this law is about. It's not about disabled people. They are specifically excluded. It's not about people with autism. Again, they are specifically excluded. It's about people with a terminal diagnosis who are in the last 6 months of their life. And many people quote, well, it's a slippery slope. All I can say is that the law, as it's suggested it would be in England, is very much based on the law in Oregon, which has been a mature law. It's been there for nearly 30 years. There has been no slippery slope. The numbers of people choosing to die in that way have barely risen in nearly 30 years. And a lot of people in Oregon, again, which is where the English law is based on, it's not based on Canada, which everybody wants to quote, it's based on Oregon. It's a very different law. Just knowing that people, that they have that option, is very comforting to them. And a lot of people never take it up.
Yeah, let me bring Gillian in there, because, you know, your argument, Barbara, is very compelling. You know, this is a very personal story to you. You have seen the sort of devastating effects of motor neurone disease. And for you and Adrian, this was about shortening death, not shortening life. And Dr. Wright, you've just heard Barbara there, you know, state her family's case for why assisted dying should be allowed in this country, for them not to travel to Switzerland for it to happen here. And she talks about the Oregon bill and this specific narrow group that will be replicated in UK law, not widened out to vulnerable groups and people with disabilities. What is your counter-argument to that?
Well, thank you. It is, all of us want to have a compassionate society, and we want no one to suffer at the end of life.
Of course, it's very nuanced. Nobody wants to say you're wrong, you're right. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. It's a very delicate issue, and I appreciate
absolutely.
that.
But I think we do, and many people have reasonable concerns about the pressure that those who are vulnerable might have to take their own lives, particularly those who might have early dementia, those who might have a learning disability, that might have chronic mental health illness, and then face a terminal illness. And these situations are complex. Other situations, like those who are already in a coercive or controlling relationship, and it is the implications throughout all of society that we are hugely concerned about. And we have learned lessons from places like Oregon, and I think it is important to note that, for example, almost a half of people in Oregon state that one of the reasons that they choose assisted dying is because they feel a burden. And that sense of internal coercion is really important to take on board. Are we really helping people who might feel a burden? And also, I think it was rightly said that Barbara mentioned that some people change their mind, and some people don't actually take the medication. Well, that's not permitted, for example, under the Scottish bill. People could change their mind, but they can't take the medication home with them. And so once you are committed, it is harder to change your mind. And that's actually what we saw in hospice. So people would come in, they would be admitted, perhaps they would be desperate, they would be struggling with really difficult symptoms, but actually we could manage to help perhaps a chest infection or help the pain that they were in. And over the course of 2 to 3 weeks, that things would change, and there would be things that they would look forward to, maybe going home to see their grandchildren or a wedding. And it was the fact that people changed their minds is really salutary, that people do have times of crisis, but actually there are real concerns about those who might, in a time of low mood, of depressive symptoms, want to take their own lives.
Yeah.
And that is why consistently the Royal College of Psychiatrists has been really concerned about the Leadbeater Bill and the lack of mental health assessment within it. We're really needing to assess the suicidal ideation that is part of the makeup of this bill as a whole.
Barbara, I think that's the underlying argument from the other side, that there is no foolproof system. There are no determinants here, as Dr. Wright was saying there. People can change their mind. This bill...
Yeah,
but let me just finish.
Yeah, sorry.
We know it's impossible to determine whether someone has been coercively controlled and forced to make that decision. There are no concrete facts or evidence. That's what I mean. There are no determinants here. I think that is the big worry from the other side in terms of making these decisions. There are no concrete answers or evidence that would go into the decision, the ultimate decision to end a life.
Well, I mean, coercion can go on at the moment, can't it? It's just done behind closed doors, not in an open way. And the whole point is that anyone who maybe wants to go down that path would have to be assessed by a doctor. I mean, we went to Switzerland because my husband had a neurological condition. He had to be seen by a psychiatrist in Switzerland before it was allowed to go ahead. You have to have full cognition. He had MND, is a cruel disease. Your body becomes wrecked, but your mind stays strong. I've seen this up close. I know what this looks like. We had access, one of the arguments is, well, if we have better palliative care, people wouldn't need to do that. We had access to superb palliative care, but as the palliative care movement knows, that there is a minority of people for whom palliative care is never going to do anything. And certainly MND is one of those things. You're not in pain, particularly with MND, you're just falling to bits. But your brain is sharp, but you can no longer breathe, you can't hold your head up, you can't move, you have no balance, you can't speak. And it's utter cruelty to make people carry on. There is no nobility in suffering when you know that the end is very close, and that I've seen this disease up close, and it's not pretty, and it doesn't get any better. it just gets worse and worse. And the whole thing about being a burden as well. I think most people, when they are in the last throes of life, people who love them will do anything to keep them alive for as long as possible because they don't want them to go. And far from coercing them to end their life, they do the opposite. They try to make them live for as long as they can. I just want to have the choice that if I ever feel that my life is not worth living, and I'm very close to death anyway, I want to have that control. I want to decide what happens to me, because it's my business. I'm not making anybody else do it. It's about choice, and I want to have that choice.
Well, listen, I really appreciate you both coming on this evening and composing your arguments to each other with such compassion and dignity, because it really is what this debate is all about. It's such a sensitive issue for so many people. Barbara Shooter there, assisted dying campaigner, and Dr. Gillian Wright from Our Duty of Care and herself a former palliative care nurse. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Good night.
Still to come on the UK Tonight, we turn our attention to the scathing report into maternity and neonatal services provided by the National Health Service. That's coming up next.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist? I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up. Big Sky News journalist. Ed Conway. Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is. First off, just the scale of what we're looking at. Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
Now, giving birth can be one of the most anxiety-inducing, scary and vulnerable things a woman can do. And so when the system that should provide the safest and most empathetic care lets you down, it's a big problem. Today, we got further insight into the National Inquiry into Maternity Services across the NHS in England, and already it makes for disturbing reading. The inquiry is led by Baroness Amos, who laid out wide-ranging failures within the service. Our health correspondent Laura Bundock explains.
Jack and Sarah's daughter Harriet was stillborn in 2016. Her death due to hospital negligence. Harriet's one of thousands of babies who've died after maternity errors.
We have been in contact with bereaved families recently, and they weren't listened to, they were ignored, all the warning signs were ignored, and I feel like it isn't going to change unless there is some form of accountability.
Maternity services are under rapid review, but Jack and Sarah found nothing new in this interim report.
If your child died in any other circumstance in life, you would get justice. People would be held to account. Yet in maternity services, it doesn't happen like that, and that is so unfair.
The serious failings Jack and Sarah experienced are reflected in Baroness Amos's investigation. She finds 6 factors causing persistent problems, including staff shortages, capacity issues with rushed appointments and long waits for assessment, issues with culture and leadership, racism and discrimination, a lack of accountability when things go wrong, and outdated, dilapidated hospital conditions. Baroness Amos also found the NHS is incentivised to report a baby's death as stillborn to avoid coroner's involvement.
We are looking at this in a lot of detail. I am not sure that as an investigation team we are qualified to be able to make that as a recommendation, but we've talked to a lot of families. This is a strand of a deliberate strand of work that we are doing because so many families raised it as a problem.
It's interesting as well.
Can I just say, it's just too soon to say what the recommendations will be, but we are looking at what kinds of recommendations we might be able to make.
We've been inundated with hundreds of emails from parents and families who feel failed by the system. One mum writes how her Bangladeshi heritage meant she wasn't taken seriously and wasn't given any pain relief. And Ali told us the light in their bay wasn't working, which meant changing dirty nappies in the dark and using a phone torch when the doctor came round. The final report is due in the spring, but many families fear it won't dig deep enough if it's to bring meaningful and lasting change.
Well, Laura Bundock is with me in the studio now. And Laura, this is very much an interim update from Baroness Amos into this national investigation, a 33-page report today. Is there anything in there that's new that we didn't already know?
Do you know what? That is the massive question, isn't it? And the very short answer is no. I think every failing, every flaw that is highlighted in this report just feels depressingly familiar. Racism, bullying, a culture of cover-up, burnt-out staff working in these dilapidated buildings, often with a lack of compassion and care. In her own report, she says here, how is it that this is acceptable in 2026? But I think lots of people will be going, how has it been acceptable for all these years? It's been allowed to carry on like this. And yet we've had report after investigation and nothing changes. I think some of the details in this report were shocking. The anecdotes you hear, particularly when it comes to hospitals not wanting to sort of report stillbirths. This really shocking stereotyping of Asian women as princesses or black women as being able to tolerate pain, that colleagues have to put up with racist, bullying behaviour from other colleagues. It doesn't get sorted out by management. And then it's almost funny that in a handover on one labour ward, they include a weather report because the building is so bad it leaks and they need to say if it's going to rain because they need to get the buckets out. So that's all in here. But when it comes to new information, that's the problem. And I think the families who've been bereaved and harmed feel that it isn't going deep enough at the moment. There's no real mention of the harm that they have suffered and are continuing to suffer, and that's what they wanted to see in here. And, it's all very well to say these are the problems, but it's much harder to fix them. And so I think there is a real split with all the maternity campaigners, and there are lots and lots of different groups involved in all of this in terms of what needs to happen. Some say there's no point carrying out rapid review. It won't do enough. It won't have any accountability. We need a statutory inquiry. For others, it's like that just takes too long. And so
we'll be here in another 5-6 years' time.
And does it ever achieve what you want it to achieve when you have a public inquiry? So there's already divisions as to what should happen. Baroness Amos now has still got this big call for evidence. So people are being told to get in touch, not just mums, but birthing partners, non-birthing partners, dads, families,
NHS staff,
everyone. She's going to gather all that evidence together, and then in a couple of months she will write her final report. This is the interim one, the final report, and there's all important recommendations. The Secretary of State is committed to implementing them.
But, you know, it's not going to be a quick fix. You see her 6 factors, the 6 issues she has. You can't solve overnight dilapidated buildings. You can't change a toxic culture overnight. You know, it's a rapid review, but it is going to be a long-term plan to try and sort out a failing system.
OK, Laura, thank you. Laura Bundock covering that story for us today. We'll have more on this coming up later on in the programme. We'll get reaction from the body that represents midwives, and we'll hear from a mother who experienced birth trauma, who says that she is still suffering 7 years on. Continuing our coverage now of the shocking report into the state of England's maternity services, which has found allegations of racism, bullying and the misclassification of baby deaths. Earlier today, I spoke with Hannah Leonard. She's the Deputy Chief Midwife at the Royal College of Midwives, and I started by asking her whether this report reflects the reality.
This report comes, unfortunately, after a decade of reports that we've had already and a significant number of findings. And what we really need to see now is action from this report. It highlights the systemic findings that we already know from previous reports. And now the time really is for the government to act on the findings from this report in terms of the task force in the future.
Yeah, the full findings will come out later in the year, but Baroness Amos wants to show transparency and that they're moving at pace. Such is the nature of maternity care in the UK, in England. Midwives, of course, the other major stakeholder in this, because, of course, we do talk about mothers and babies and the outcomes for them under maternity care. What is it in particular that you felt midwives have put across throughout the course of this investigation?
I think for midwives, it's about the fact that this has been long-standing issues that have been raised by midwives, by MSWs for a long time, and it highlights the systemic understaffing, the poor estates that the midwives and maternity support workers work in, that women and families are having their babies in, and despite recommendations and supposed investment in that, it has remained unchanged.
Our guest on our show tonight, Gabriella, who went through her own birth trauma and has told her story on Sky News, said that, you know, she was in a delivery room with around 18 people and no one was aware she was close to death because of the amount of blood she'd been losing, because the staff were not adequately trained. Is that a real danger that, you know, the staff, midwives, obstetricians, the maternity care unit is stretched so thin that women are being put at risk because of staff being improperly trained in those emergency scenarios?
So training is really important to any healthcare professional. The training that midwives get is a 3 to 4 year program, and at the point of registration, they come up capable and able to be a midwife, and are fantastic in the ability to do that if the environment that they work in enables them to do that. And what that means is that we need to have the right amount of midwives to be able to support the students when they're learning in practice, but also following that, we need as midwives to be able to consistently and frequently have the time to train as part of the multi-professional team. And without safe staffing numbers, what we find is that actually we don't have the time to be released from clinical practice. We're being pulled off of that training frequently to deliver, just to even experience and receive a bare minimum of mandatory training that we need to have. And that's got to change.
I just wanted to pull out some quotes from midwives that spoke to Baroness Amos. What are the quotes? "Please, can you tell them we need help to put pride back into our profession?" One midwife telling the inquiry, "I feel embarrassed to say that I am a midwife now." How do you put pride back into the profession?
Morale for midwifery for the profession has continued to plummet, and that's not surprising given the decade of reviews that we have. And it's imperative that the impact of Baroness Amos's view and the ability for it to be a conduit for the change that is much needed. I mean, the difference this report has in terms of action is incredible if that action happens in a sustainable and funded way. And what that enables us to do is evaluate those changes and gives us opportunity to put pride back in the profession.
Hannah, a number of shocking findings that came out today that I wanted to put to you. They're uncomfortable. There is evidence from some families that said that baby deaths were being misclassified to prevent further investigations, and families telling Baroness Amos that their babies were designated stillborn instead of dying after birth. The families feeling that the system incentivised the recording of deaths at stillbirths, as this prevents the case from being investigated by the coroner. And we know that the NHS faced an estimated £27.4 billion in payments for maternity negligence in England since 2019. So there's some serious and really upsetting allegations from families to this report. I just wondered what your response to that was.
I think throughout the decade of reviews that we've had, we've seen a significant amount of focus on investigations and learning and improving that accountability of care and the learning when the care, when we have poor quality care or women and families are harmed. And what's important there is that we still continue to utilise those investigation mechanisms to make sure learning happens. And sometimes the focus is too much on the investigation and not enough accountability on making sure that learning happens in practice. And we need the time to be able to do that.
Well, as part of Sky News' extensive coverage of this issue, we brought you the film Birth Trauma, The Women Who Weren't Listened To. It tells the story of 3 women who suffered traumatic births in NHS England hospitals. They say they were failed and made to feel voiceless. Let's take a look.
He was like, "I'm really sorry, but I can't find a heartbeat." And honestly, in that moment, the sounds that came out of me, I don't even know what they were. They're not something I could ever replicate. It was just this moment of pure horror and pain, like nothing else that is imaginable.
There was nothing happening. And then they said that, we're going to have to go and do a cesarean, which is not what I wanted at all. Again, I'm in the situation that I knew I didn't want, and I've lost full control.
It feels so strange after you've delivered, and I can remember looking down at my body and feeling like it had become a battleground.
Well, that film is online if you would like to watch it, and I recommend that you do. One of the women who took part, Gabriella, is in the studio with me now. And Gabriella, I have seen your film a number of times, and every time I'm just as upset and angry as the first time. You bravely go on camera to tell your story because your birth trauma, you came away with a lovely baby boy, but it has had life-changing consequences for you.
I am forever changed, and it's for life. It's forever, and it's not like it's going to get any better either. You know, come menopause, it's going to, you know, probably have to do many surgeries, and I mean, it just keeps going. It's an everyday struggle.
Yeah. Without going into too much detail, you suffered a tear, which, you know, women talk about a lot with births. It happens, and you had a very serious tear that has had medical implications. As you said, that is something you live with and is going to get worse. You'll have seen the interim report today from Baroness Amos, and I was just talking to our health correspondent Laura Bundock, and I said, what's new in there? We've heard all of this before. I feel like this is one of a number of maternity care reports over the years that we have had commissioned and listened to. How does it make you feel to be going over the same trauma again, so many more women and families?
Yeah, I mean, it's just frustrating. I mean, let's cut the talk and let's get some action going. I mean, let's move on already. We already know all these things. There's nothing new. Let's get a maternity commissioner and get some action going in play. There's people dying. There's babies dying. There's injuries happening. I am one of those people for the rest of their lives. So let's just move on already. Enough with the talk. Let's get some action. That's what I say.
Because this happened to you 9, nearly 10 years ago now. Your boy's soon to be 10. Yeah. And I'm sure in a way that has gone really quickly, as parenthood and childhood does. But in a way, because of what you went through, I'm sure it feels like just yesterday you were at the start of this really painful and life-changing journey. And in terms of the action, you talk about the maternity commissioner there. I mean, again, that is something that's come to the fore recently, but it's not a new idea. It's not a new recommendation. What do you want to say to the MPs, the government, the health secretary about actually getting on with it? And, you know, the health secretary has committed to implementing the recommendations that Baroness Amos will come out with later this year. What would you say to them about the importance of getting a move on?
I mean, it's great. Look, we're moving forward somehow. We're getting the word out.
By having an open dialogue.
Exactly. Yeah. We're talking about it, and it's no longer taboo. This is fantastic. I'm very grateful for that, and I hope that it moves on forward, but there's action. I would say, for me, I was slightly disappointed that there wasn't a seventh pillar or a seventh, factor into the 6 that we're saying. Training and education, you know, prevention. That should be the foundation of all of this. That you start there and then you move up. There's a lot of things, and again, let's just move on with it. And we need to get everyone involved. Everybody needs to talk about this. The MPs need to start making action. Let's talk, let's do it. And I don't know how we can figure this out, but I know that training and education and prevention is key.
Training is something you're big on, and why is that? Tell me how that played a factor in your birth trauma, because when you were giving birth, there were a large number of medical professionals in the room, yet it went wrong. So why is training so important for you in your quest for safer maternity care?
Yeah, I mean, I believe that if you have consistent training throughout the system that you have in place, then there won't be as many mistakes. It's just fact. I mean, we know that. So if you have better training, better education in both, not just the staff, but also for the parents. It's not for, you know, for both mom and dad, We need to know also what can we do, you know, to make things better. How can we have prevention as well? But it's just key to everything else.
Yeah, when I put that to the Royal College of Midwives, they talked about how stretched they are as a service and budget constraints as well. So in terms of continual training and updating practices and having the luxury of time to do that, they just don't have. And you would like to see that addressed. Accountability is something that you want to see as well, because you were told during your birth that you had a second-degree tear, and, you know, for women out there who've had a baby, they will be well familiar with that term. But you actually had a third-degree tear, which affected your bowel, right? Which is, you know, that is a big injury, and as we've discussed, life-changing. And that wasn't spotted at the time by any of the medical professionals in the room. And when you were seen by a specialist, when you were in so much pain, you went back to that NHS trust, and what were you told?
I was told that I couldn't put in a complaint, that it was just a pelvic floor, just do your pelvic floors exercises. What do you mean? You know, like, but once you find out what you have, and it's actually a third-degree tear that
something that they had missed.
Yes, something they missed, that you were supposed to check me. I'm trusting you. This is my first baby I've ever had. I have no idea what to do. You're the experts. And that's why you lose all control. And they said, I have a third-degree tear that has affected my anal sphincter. That means I have fecal incontinence. I walk out the door, I may have an accident.
To the point
with
where,
a baby.
To the point where you don't eat when you're out.
That's right. Flying, if I go flying back to the States,
no,
I don't
eat.
Yeah. And if I eat, ooh, I better be careful. I better be close to that bathroom, and with 3 kids in tow.
And you've been living with that for the last 10 years, and you will live with that for the rest of your life. And as you said, going into menopause, I mean, that's a whole other subject, isn't it? But that will get worse. You were also told by the NHS Trust that you had run out of time to lodge a complaint as well. Is that right?
They told me, because I went in there to make a complaint, just a complaint.
Yeah.
And they said it was too late. And I thought, well, I'm just putting a complaint. There shouldn't be a time limit. And they said, no, you're too late. Sorry, hun, you know, it's too late. And so what I did was I just wrote an email. You know, I wrote an email to no one, never sent it, just to get it out of my system, to heal. And this is what I'm doing now, is I'm healing every time I talk about it.
And this is why you took part in the Sky News film, because you and the other 2 women that took part didn't feel listened to at the time. And even when you found your voice, you go back to that NHS Trust to go, do you know what? I didn't get good care, and they wouldn't listen to you then. And that is something we hear a lot, hundreds of women emailing us here at Sky News, getting in touch on social media. I was not listened to. And there is a certain degree, isn't there, when you have a baby where, you know, when I've only had 1 child, that was my first baby. I sort of spoke up, but again, you've all got qualifications I have, and I'm very much in your hands. Is that how you felt throughout the entire process?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, like you said, they're, like I said earlier, they're experts. They're the ones. They know what they're doing. They've done this before, or at least you hope. They are stretched. The NHS system's broken, and we complain about it.
Yeah,
like
it's an understanding of that, of course.
But let's do something about it. The system has to be changed. There's no, you know, there's a population is so much larger. I mean, it just needs to be radical, and it needs to happen now.
Yeah, it can't just run itself into the ground. Like you said, action needs to be taken. Gabriella, really good to see you. Thank you so much for coming in. I know we're going to continue this conversation. You're very much part of our discussion of this here at Sky News, you bringing your story to the fore to help us get this message across and really push for some change. So we're definitely going to speak again, Gabriella. It was really good to see you tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Right, let's have a look at some other news from today. Sky News learning that the SOA murderer, Ian Huntley, had been attacked in prison and he is in a serious condition tonight. He's been taken to hospital after being found at Franklin Prison in Durham. Huntley, you may remember, was convicted of the murders of 10-year-olds Holly Wells and Jessica Chapman in Soham, Cambridgeshire back in 2002. For an update on what is happening, let's speak to our crime commentator, Martin Brunt. Martin.
The Durham police have said in the last couple of hours or so that they have a suspect. He's a fellow prisoner in his 40s. But he's not been charged, but obviously he's a prisoner, so he's not going anywhere. The police have spent the day at the prison, and they've established that this attack took place in the prison workshop. Now, the police have said that Huntley is still in hospital with serious head injuries. The Sun newspaper, which first reported this attack, said that he'd been attacked with a metal pole with a spike, so that might give you some idea of the extent of his injury. I suppose nobody will be surprised to learn that Huntley's been attacked. It's not the first time. There have been at least 2 or 3, and 2 of them at least very serious in the past. As a convicted child killer, he's always going to be a target. And in the sort of skewed morality of prison life, there's always a feeling that, OK, justice might have been delivered by the court, but what's really important here is revenge. And, you know, somebody this morning has tried to exact revenge on Ian Huntley. There were suggestions that an air ambulance had been sent, so serious were his injuries this morning. In the end, it appears that wasn't needed, and he was taken to hospital by road. That's not to minimise his injuries. He's still, according to the police, seriously unwell in hospital. And of course, the reality is, another reality is that if he survives this attack, he will continue to be vulnerable. And such is the chaos inside prisons today, with overcrowding, disillusioned senior officers leaving, being replaced by inexperienced newcomers. It's almost impossible to protect even the most vulnerable prisoners.
Martin, thank you. Still to come on the UK tonight, we'll have all the day's sports news.
What's it like doing this kind of stuff when he's not here?
Yeah, I miss him. He just inspired me to be a better person. He's shown us what living looks like in the toughest and most difficult of circumstances.
I'm Greg Milam, and I'm Sky's chief North of England correspondent.
Those vivid colours of summer have faded now, but the trauma for everyone who witnessed what happened here hasn't gone away.
Devastation. We lost 3 of them.
Ruda Cabana's guilty pleas mean they won't have to relive what they saw in court, but everyone here tells you they'll carry it for the rest of their lives. You see people running red lights time after time after time. This is an offence that sometimes has the most awful of consequences.
When you speed through a pedestrian crossing, there is a risk that you could batter somebody to death.
It isn't what politicians see from election battle buses, but what ordinary people see from the buses that shape the timetable of their lives.
I feel like there's no trust between the people and the politicians.
Labour's going to get in definitely, and they're no better than the Conservatives.
I've reported from around the world and around the UK.
Mandatory evacuation, you must leave!
For many people, Harvey is far from over.
People here believe the water will be this deep for weeks.
Are you trying to run me over, Sir Philip?
No, go away.
Look like it, sir. Will you respond to those who've made accusations, Sir Philip?
Can you go away?
A very good morning to you all.
Morning.
Do you regret the tweet, Gary?
There's no sign publicly, at least, of either side being willing to give ground.
Brianna's dad told Sky News what he thinks of them.
If I'm honest, I hate them. They're just evil. They'll always be monsters.
He had a beautiful death. He fell asleep in my arms. This is about a dying person's choice to die peacefully when they want to, on their terms.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. I'm ready. Are you? Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
And well, it's about that time. Jess is here with a look at the sport. Hi, Jess.
I am. Hello. Good to see you. And I'll be updating you on a busy day of European action for British teams.
Love him, hate him, you can't ignore him. And now, after over 12 years, Roy Keane's Old Trafford career has come to a dramatic end.
What I remember about that day is that Sir Alex Ferguson had his usual press conference at Carrington on the Friday morning. Nothing significant, no real business to talk about.
Metatarsal bones are they're pretty fragile really. He's on the way back anyway, and I think probably 2 or 3 weeks for him.
We're literally 5 minutes up the road away from the press conference and a statement is released. Roy Keane is leaving Man United, so we basically had a press conference, not mentioned it, waited till we all left the training ground and then that was it.
It was a very amicable meeting with Roy and myself, and my best player in my time, but probably one of the best players ever in the history of the club.
So close in the past, now Sir Alex Ferguson must begin the search for a replacement.
He's a talismanic player for us, captain, won a lot with us, and unfortunately he left and we had to do it. That's the same in any football club. You're always, keeping it fluid, keeping it sort of up to date and changing every time. So I think we were prepared for it, put it that way.
United hadn't won the title since 2003. Chelsea were blowing everybody out of the water at that point. Roman Abramovich, Jose Mourinho were coming as coach. They were buying all the best players, and United were going after players. I think Michael Ballack, Michael Essien, Arjen Robben, all these players that United lined up, and they went to Chelsea. They're now trying to replace Roy Keane, knowing that as soon as they identify a player, Chelsea might take him.
Michael Carrick, when did he first enter the club's radar?
That was a discussion that Alex.
Quick look at the weather now.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News weather.
The unsettled and mild weather is going to continue for the next few days. Saturday looking briefly colder. It's going to be rather windy this evening with prolonged rain over Wales and central and southwest of England. Most other places will be dry, but the north will see a few heavy showers, especially Scotland. You can expect further showers there overnight.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News weather.
Right, well, that is it for the UK tonight. We will return on Monday night at 8 o'clock. See you again. Up next, it is The World with Yalda.